Hey there, friends. By now, most of you have seen the South Carolina voter who was slapped by a poll worker and then he went after her, all for allegedly wearing a Let's Go Brandon hat. Take a look at the news report.
Wednesday morning around 11 a.m., this Orangeburg County polling location had an incident between a voter and a poll worker, and it was caught on camera by a voter. The video shows a voter and a poll worker in a heated conversation about what is believed to be political literature the man was wearing on his hat.
Wow. Why is it defending you? It's like defending me. All right, then shut the hell up and let me vote.
This led to a confrontation between the two, and the Orangeburg Department of Public Safety responded. Captain Victor Cordone with DPS told News 19 that the poll worker was given a citation for assault and battery, but no arrests were made. John Michael Catalano with the South Carolina Elections Commission says that campaign literature of all kinds is not allowed at polling places.
Our state law prohibits a person from displaying any type of campaign literature within 500 feet of an entrance to a polling place. So campaign materials, really anything that advertises a candidate or a political party. So things like hats, pins, buttons, shirts, signs, any sort of campaign literature that is supporting or opposing a certain political party or candidate is considered to be campaign material.
Catalano says the meaning behind this law is to keep the polls neutral.
I think really the intent behind it is so that it's basically to keep the polling place sacred. Right. The time for campaigning is over once the voter is in the polling place. They need to be able to cast their ballot the way they want to do it without being intimidated, intentionally or unintentionally, by another person in the polling place.
The Orangeburg County Voter Registration and Elections Office said in a statement to News 19 that Orangeburg County works hard to ensure elections are safe, secure, and run smoothly, allowing all eligible voters the opportunity to vote in fair and impartial elections in accordance with state and federal regulations.
So at least something was done to the person who assaulted the guy who was trying to cast a vote there. Personally, other than using foul language, which that's not against the law. I don't see it anywhere in the South Carolina code for polling booths or in any other code out there. Is it poor taste? Yes. Is it illegal? No. You don't slap somebody for wearing a Let's Go Brandon hat, which was the allegation that he had. It's not a Donald Trump hat. It's not a MAGA hat. It's a Let's Go Brandon hat. That's very clear that we talk about that. I think that that's going to be a solid point that I'm going to address later in the video. But that's not a reason for a poll worker to strike somebody. It's not up to them. It's up to them to find somebody to remove that person if they refuse to leave. It's not up to them to abuse. And look, personally, it looked to me like she was trying to render whatever punishment was due at that point. That's not her job to do that. Granted, these signs are everywhere in South Carolina. No campaign materials allowed. This material includes, but is not limited to, buttons, hats, pins, t-shirts, literature, posters, signs. Notice it says on their little signs that they have your candidate, right? So they're making it very clear that none of these items that you could walk in there with, buttons, hats, pins, t-shirts, literature, posters, signs, with your candidate on there. You hear what I'm saying, right? With your candidate on there. This has to be a pro position. Granted, the position that this guy is taking with, and again, I couldn't really, if you try to blow up the picture, I can't really tell what's on his hat. They are saying that it is a Let's Go Brandon hat. It's not even the F Brandon or FJB that you have seen in some people, and it's certainly not a MAGA hat. Again, Let's Go Brandon. Very, very clear that we understand that that's what the hat was that was in question. Now, if you look at South Carolina's laws, it does say under Section 725-180, unlawful distribution of campaign literature, it is unlawful for a person to distribute any type of campaign literature, and then it goes on to describe the rest of it. That is, if you're wearing something for your candidate, that is considered campaign literature. And I believe this is where this poll worker thought she could do what she wanted to do, and I'll get more into what might have motivated her later as well. But the poll manager shall use every reasonable means to keep the area within 500 feet of any such entrance clear of political literature and displays. So, every reasonable means. Physical assault of somebody wearing a hat about a candidate who's not in the race, more on that later, is not reasonable means. She may think that it is, which was a bad decision on her part, and she's going to find that out. But striking a man and rendering whatever punishment you think is due for him wearing a hat that upsets you, that you're not happy with, is not reasonable means. And again, she's going to find out. Now, I do have the unedited video here. This is going to have some language in here, so I do apologize ahead of time for anybody who might be offended by this. But I want you to see the whole video, because as you saw in the initial news report that I showed you, there were things blacked out and there were words that were omitted from here, or at least bleeped out. I want you to see the raw video to be able to appreciate what really happened here, and to see that, honestly, guys, both sides reacted indifferently that I don't think I would approve of. But at the same time, after this person strikes this man, she should be very lucky that she's not scheduling a dental appointment this morning, if you know what I mean. Watch the raw video.
You fucking bitch.
Oh, wow.
That's no reason? Yeah, I'll let her sir.
Wow.
This is my motherfucking right here.
Wow.
Why is it defending you? It's like defending you. All right, then shut the hell up and let me vote.
Okay, Jamie. Okay, we ain't got nothing else to say. We ain't got nothing else to say.
Wow.
We're gonna move on. Next thing.
There it is right there.
Wow. Oh, wow. God. Oh.
Don't do that.
Wow. 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 I'm not going to help with him. I may want to help with him.
So clearly this woman, unprovoked, no matter what this man said right here, clearly she felt the need to strike him, to assault him, to hit him, because she didn't like the words he was using and the hat he was wearing at this time. That's unacceptable. Now, one thing that I want to point out, and I briefly mentioned it earlier, let's think about this. The South Carolina law, and the same type of law as in many other states, I'm in Louisiana, that does apply here as well. The law prohibits you from wearing any kind of campaign material for your candidate, right? I would assume it would also prevent you from wearing anything negative about the other candidate, right? Isn't that a reasonable thing to assume? In other words, if I'm a Trump supporter, I would think in this case, I could not obviously wear a MAGA or a Trump shirt or cap, but I also could not wear an anti-Kamala Harris cap. You hear what I'm saying, right? You couldn't wear an anti-Kamala Harris hat. You know who's not in the race? Joe Biden or Brandon. This guy was wearing a hat that was clearly very smart aleck-like, and I think it's funny, very smart aleck-like about a candidate who's not running in this race. This hat he was wearing is not anti-anybody's campaign. There is no Joe Biden campaign. There's not a campaign for Joe Biden. Joe Biden dropped out in July. Joe Biden is not affiliated in any way with the Harris administration's campaign. Where do you see it say anywhere about Brandon or Biden in the Harris campaign? It says that nowhere. So if this hat was meant to disparage the Biden campaign, which obviously that's what it was all about, it was anti-Joe Biden. Him wearing this cap should not have any kind of recourse implication, no impact whatsoever on the current race, which is between Donald Trump and Kamala Harris. So to me, this man has a much bigger victory on his hands for him being told to take a hat off for somebody who is not even in the race. This would be like me wearing a George Bush or a Ronald Reagan hat to a poll and then making me take it off because it was considered campaign material, which it clearly isn't, because those people are not running for office. But I want to point out something even more sinister. First of all, look at these poll workers. All Kamala Harris supporters. You know they are. You know that they are, right? Especially the way they reacted. But you know they are. They're the bottom of the barrel. A lot of these poll workers are doing this part-time, or they don't work, so they're just doing this whenever, right? So these are essentially the bottom of the barrel. This is not the cream of the crop. Have you ever seen the cream of the crop at a polling booth? In many cases, this is either retirees, which good for them for doing something that they want to do. But look at the younger people in this video, the people who are not retirement age. Let me just say that. These people are definitely Kamala voters, Kamala supporters, and they're here with an axe to grind about anybody that's not supporting their candidate or voting the way they want to. They are emboldened in these places because they're all run by Democrats. All these polling places are essentially run by Democrats. And again, it's because they don't have anything else to do, or if it's a full-time job for some of them, it's because they are the bottom of the barrel. They are the scabs. They're the ones that nobody else is going to hire, nobody else wants. So this is the low-hanging fruit to them. This is an easy job. Qualification, very, very low. You can probably speak remedial English and get away with getting a job, probably even a poll manager in this case. So we're dealing with an element here. A lot of people ask, why are there all Democrats here? Again, this is why. People who are more qualified and harder workers, they're not doing this. This is not what they do. They have real jobs, legitimate jobs. Unfortunately, this is what we're going to always be faced with, because you're always going to have the bottom of the barrel running these polling sites and things like that during all these elections. This is not going to change, guys. But remember a report that I did a couple of weeks ago where I talked about how the FBI and DHS came out and they're trying to start something. Boy, I have a good video tomorrow that's going to be on the heels of this. They're trying to paint people like me and people like you as, quote, extremists, violent extremists, as they've done for the last 4 years, right? FBI has consistently put things out, talked about Second Amendment supporters and decent conservative people. They're trying to paint us with a broad brush of being violent and being bad people. They put this report out, and I reported on this last week or the week before, talking about how they anticipated some kind of attacks. Now, granted, lone wolf attacks, but it's important enough where they felt like putting this report out saying that poll workers might be being attacked. So they're putting this fear in the minds of these poll workers, thinking that somebody's coming to get them.
The FBI and the Department of Homeland Security are warning in this new intelligence bulletin of the heightened risk of lone wolf attacks by domestic extremists motivated by election-related conspiracy theories, including beliefs in widespread voter fraud and their hatred of their political opponents. This will surprise no one who's been paying attention, but it's significant that these agencies are putting this out to local law enforcement a week before the election. The new unclassified bulletin says the goal of these attacks would be to terrorize and disrupt the vote. And to be clear, this document does not describe intelligence about any specific threat. It talks about a general atmosphere of anger and misinformation that could prompt unstable people to engage in threats or violence. The report identified potential targets of violence to include candidates, elected officials, election workers.
That's fear-mongering. That's exactly what that is. That is fear-mongering. That is putting an idea in somebody's mind who is stupid. These people are easy to convince of things. They're essentially willful slaves. They're okay with you telling them what they need to think and what they need to do. They're just not smart enough. They're lazy. And they're willing to take whatever you spoon feed them and run with it. So this report that they put out was intended to plant that seed into the smooth brainers out there and have them thinking stupid things that simply aren't going to happen. That's why this woman felt it okay to strike this man, because she bought into the slave mentality, hook, line, and sinker, when she heard there might be attacks against poll workers. So what I was doing is I was defending myself because this man got belligerent. Let's remember this. She struck first. That's why the charges are against her. No charges against this man right now. Want to know another thing? In that same South Carolina polling law that I just read to you about having campaign material, look down at the very bottom. This is the last section, section 725-220. A poll worker, whether or not compensated, while acting pursuant to or in furtherance of the holding of conduct of an election, shall be immune from personal civil liability for any act or omission when the act or omission is done or made in good faith and does not constitute gross negligence, recklessness, willfulness, or wantonness. Well, clearly that last part of that sentence where it says made in good faith and does not constitute gross negligence, recklessness, willfulness, or wantonness, that's going to disqualify this person. But she is under the impression, and very well may get off because of this little section right here, where it grants these poll workers, while acting in the pursuant or furtherance of holding this election, that they get immunity from personal civil liability for any act or omission. When you spoon feed dumb people fear-mongering material and then you give them cover with immunity, this is what you get. This situation was created on purpose because what they really wanted, they were okay with this stupid woman striking this man. They wanted this man to beat her up. They wanted this man to attack her. Then they wanted other people to attack the poll workers in defense of this man. It didn't work out for them. I'm not saying that what the man said to these ladies was okay. Not that I have a horrible problem with it. I'm just being fair right now. But I wouldn't have done that. I wouldn't not have conducted myself like that. At least I don't think I would have. It's hard when you're not in that situation. But this man was pushed. They wanted to provoke this man. Maybe not these poll workers intentionally, but when that report was put out by the federal government, they wanted to instill that fear into these stupid poll workers. They know they're dealing with dumb people. They know this. They know they have hired the bottom of the barrel. They know they have hired the dummies out there. So they put these reports out to stoke that fear in them and to get them automatically defensive when they see somebody who may not be carrying the water for their candidate. And then they try to get them to provoke these people, knowing that, hey, we might have a problem here. Somebody might be a little bit bent out of shape whenever you give them attitude, and all they're trying to do is cast a vote. And again, I got to repeat this. I think in the end, this man is going to come out victorious because Brandon/Joe Biden is not running for office. There is no current campaign for Joe Biden. So the way this man was treated was 100% wrong. I don't care what F-bombs he dropped. Doesn't matter to me. Was it in poor taste? Yes. Was it illegal? No. This man should get off 100% because they applied a standard to him that is non-existent. Joe Biden is not running for office. Kamala Harris is. This was not a let's go Kamala hat.
I don't understand the point that you're making.
God save the Queen, man.
I'm sorry, I thought this was America. He's so